A lot of our viewers, clients travel a lot and are still traveling. What precautions can they take if they are getting on a flight in the next few weeks?
Well, of course, any public place where you're close to other people carries a small but significant risk of catching something from them, and that hasn't changed with the current outbreak. It's the same principles. One thing about the airline environment is that it's got a very pure air supply. So people may not realize, but the fresh air flow in an airliner is about 10 times that of a normal air-conditioned building. Half of that air is fresh, and the other half is recycled through very efficient HEPA filters, the same type we use in operating theatres. So that air supply is 99.97% pure in terms of bacteria and viruses, at least. But the problem that remains is if you're up close to somebody who's unwell at the time, and that's the risk that you have to be conscious of. As with any other public place, there are some tips that you could adopt that will help that in terms of hygiene. And surprisingly enough, one of the most important one is hand washing and hand hygiene, because these respiratory viruses require the person to either cough on you to transmit or to cough onto a surface that you then touch soon after a surface.
So, David, I've literally just got off a 6-hour flight, and there were some people wearing masks, there were some people wiping seats, etc. You know, I suppose we're seeing a little bit of panic and reaction. But talk to me about the material impact and the benchmarks that you're using to traffic, the geographies that are going to be most impacted in the data that you see at the moment, and the monetary value.
Well, I'm a medical person, not an economics one, so I can't really speak with authority on that. But in terms of what you said about people's concern, that's valid. In terms of the masks that you mentioned, they're really very ineffective, other than if you give them to a person who's unwell at the time, for that person to breathe. Sterilizing surfaces, probably not necessary, but an understandable precaution that people take.
David, we certainly have seen several airlines either cancelling routes or restricting flights to outbreak hotspots, but some of the cancellations are actually to do with lower demands rather than preventing the spread of the coronavirus. Is the airline industry managing this correctly at the moment? Should they be cancelling more flights, or is that actually not an effective way of containing the coronavirus and therefore they should just be carrying on as normal?
Well, airlines are all making their own risk assessment and decisions on the basis of a combination of things like restrictions that are preventing people from moving, availability of passengers and availability of crew. And so that's not something that IATA dictates for them, but they're all certainly trying to manage that. And we have an international workshop going on in the next couple of days, just trying to make sure that we're taking the right approach to contend with this as an industry.
David, can I take you back then to the medical side in terms of the response mechanism? What was the single biggest learning from the last series of outbreaks, whether it was SARS, whether it was the Middle East respiratory virus? What have we learned the most and got better at?
One of the main lessons really has been the value of close international collaboration, and WHO and IATA have a work plan that's run through all of those years and throughout those outbreaks and is still operational now, along with ICAO, the International Civil Aviation Organization. And you'll find that all of those organizations give very much the same messages about aviation as it pertains to outbreaks. And one of those messages that you've seen strongly from WHO is that travel and trade restrictions don't necessarily help, and in fact often they hinder the handling of outbreaks.